The camera slowly opens, panning across a mountain range draped in mist. The peaks are jagged, their rocky surfaces cutting through the dense fog that rolls and swirls like ancient whispers. The scene is serene, almost peaceful, but something about the silence feels heavy, as if the air itself is waiting. The visual glides across the landscape until it reaches a man sitting at the summit of the tallest peak. He sits with casual dominance, legs spread wide, one arm resting on his knee, the other holding a cigarette between his fingers. His coat flutters slightly in the mountain breeze, the mist swirling lazily around him. He's the kind of man who makes stillness feel like power, his presence commanding the peak. He brings the cigarette to his lips, taking a slow drag before exhaling into the mist, smoke curling out into the air, mixing with the natural fog as if it belongs there. The camera continues past him, down the mountainside, and what was once mist begins to blur, mixing with something darker. The view lowers, revealing the true source of the haze. Far below, entire cities lie in ruin. Towers, once mighty, are shattered, their remains little more than skeletal ruins reaching hopelessly toward the sky. Walls have crumbled, homes flattened beyond recognition, and schools, once places of hope, are nothing but rubble, crushed under the force of unimaginable destruction. And the smoke, thick and relentless, rises from the wreckage, smothering the air, mixing with the mist above. Everything is destroyed. Even the people, reduced to silent shadows amidst the debris, frozen in the aftermath of devastation. The camera pans back, returning to the man at the top of the mountain. He takes another slow drag from his cigarette, the ember glowing briefly as the wind picks up around him. His eyes, cold and indifferent, scan the carnage below, his expression unreadable. With a flick of his wrist, he casually tosses the cigarette, watching it fall into the abyss. He exhales, his voice low, steady. "Funny thing about fire," he murmurs, almost to himself. "Burns everything away, leaves nothing, except the truth." His words hang in the cold air as the wind carries away the last tendrils of smoke from his lips. The camera lingers on his face for a moment, the distant crackle of the burning cities barely audible in the background. Then the silence returns, broken only by the quiet howl of the mountain winds. Part 2. The camera lingers on the man at the summit, his eyes fixed on the ruined cities below, lost in some grim contemplation. Suddenly, a faint rustling of footsteps breaks the silence behind him. From the mist, a young figure emerges, a boy, perhaps 10 or 11, face streaked with dirt and tear tracks, his eyes blazing with a desperate, reckless fury. In his small, trembling hands, he grips a crudely sharpened stick, his makeshift weapon trembling as he approaches. The boy stops for a moment, his gaze hardening, resolve flaring in his tear-streaked face. Then with a raw, furious cry, he leaps toward the man, thrusting the sharp stick forward with every ounce of strength his small frame can muster. The man barely glances over his shoulder, a flicker of mild irritation crossing his face. He moves with an almost lazy grace, one arm lifting in a fluid motion. With a single dismissive swipe, he slaps the boy aside, sending him tumbling off the edge of the rock with effortless force. The boy's figure vanishes into the mist below, his cry swallowed by the unforgiving silence of the mountains. The man's hand drops back to his side, the faintest glimmer of disdain in his expression. He lets out a slow exhale, watching the smoke and mist continue to mingle below him, indifferent to the desperate child who'd attempted to confront him. He mutters under his breath, almost amused. "Some lessons you don't survive." The camera shifts, pulling back from him, leaving the man alone once more on his mountaintop throne as the wind howls through the empty silence around him. Below, the scene shifts to the base of the mountain, where the faint hum of an engine breaks the quiet once again. A lone figure appears on the horizon, a motorcycle slicing through the dust and debris, kicking up a trail as it moves down the cracked, barren road. The rider's figure is shadowed and lean, helmeted, moving with calm precision, as if undeterred by the wreckage all around. The camera follows close, capturing the view through the rider's eyes as they pass through the wasteland. The skeletal remains of homes and buildings loom on either side, scorched and twisted, the faint shadows of former lives barely visible in the rubble. There's an eerie stillness to it all, a reminder of the world that once was, and the merciless hand that destroyed it. The rider slows, coasting to a stop on the outskirts of the city's remains. They dismount, glancing up at the distant peak where the man sits alone, shrouded in mist and smoke, a distant observer of his own devastation. The rider pauses, tilting their head slightly as they study the man, unreadable beneath their helmet's visor. The rider's voice breaks the silence, muffled but clear, steady as stone. "Strange, isn't it?" they say, voice calm yet cutting through the thick silence. "How the world falls apart so easily, but memories cling like a curse." For a moment, the rider and the man on the mountaintop exist in parallel, the watcher and the traveler both bound to a broken world by different threads. The rider glances down the path ahead, then back at the mountain before turning their gaze forward, a lone figure moving onward through the shattered landscape. As the camera pulls out, capturing both figures in the vast, ravaged world, the silence settles once more. The air holds the weight of unspoken stories and unfinished vengeance, as if the land itself is bracing for the next turn of fate. Part 3. The camera lingers as the man watches the lone rider in the distance, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. He lets out a short, uninterested sigh, and with one last glance over the smoldering ruins below, he rises from his rocky throne. He steps down from the peak with a casual, almost lazy grace, each stride heavy with purpose as he descends from the mist-shrouded heights. His coat billows behind him, dark against the smoky backdrop, his boots crunching on the rocky path as he makes his way down. As he nears the base of the mountain, something catches his eye. Movement amidst the scattered rocks and twisted roots. The boy, the one who had lunged at him with that sharp stick and the desperate rage, lies sprawled against a jagged boulder. Though bruised and bloodied, his body isn't the mangled mess the man had expected. He's breathing, albeit faintly, and his small fingers still clutch at the broken stick, a stubbornness refusing to let go even in unconsciousness. The man lets out a low, surprised chuckle, crossing his arms as he looks down at the boy with a mixture of amusement and mild respect. "Still breathing, huh?" he murmurs, shaking his head with a smirk. "Guess you got more spine than sense?" He crouches beside the boy, reaching into a small, worn pouch that hangs from his belt. From it, he pulls out a small vial, faintly glowing with a soft blue light. It's a light potion, one step above the weakest, but potent enough to keep death at bay. He swirls the vial thoughtfully, watching the liquid catch the faint rays of sunlight filtering through the smoky air. The man mutters to himself, almost as if he's amused by his own generosity. "Wouldn't normally bother with charity, but something tells me you're not done being a thorn in someone's side." He presses the vial to the boy's lips, tipping it just enough for the liquid to trickle down, its glow briefly illuminating the boy's battered face. The boy's breathing steadies, his bruises beginning to fade slightly as the potion works its gentle magic, enough to ease his pain, but nowhere near powerful enough to heal him completely. The man watches for a moment, expression still unreadable, then stands, pocketing the empty vial. As he turns to leave, he glances over his shoulder at the boy's form, his voice a low, mocking drawl. "Next time, kid, sharpen your skills before you sharpen your sticks." With that, he straightens and continues down the mountain path, his silhouette fading into the haze, leaving the boy alone with his half-healed wounds and the faint, lingering warmth of the potion. The camera follows him as he strides away, his figure cutting through the mist with the same ruthless ease that reduced the cities below to dust. Behind him, the boy stirs, his fingers still gripping the broken stick with a renewed determination, the light potion pulsing softly in his veins. The faintest spark of resolve flickers in his eyes as he watches the man's retreating figure, a reminder that, Though battered, he's still alive, and his fight is far from over.